Welcome to the Creator's Journal podcast, where we discuss creativity and mindsets that lead to fulfilling and productive lives. This podcast features many meaningful discussions with others about creative lessons, how they apply to life, how they apply to business, and they all revolve around the underlying excitement and joy that we as creatives feel when we apply creativity to the world around us in our own unique way. I think that feeling is incredible. We share creative lessons in business, athletics, mindfulness, journaling, meditation, whatever the domain, to help us grow not just as designers and creatives, but as people. So get out your mental journal, fire up your internal creative software. Thank you for tuning in, and please enjoy the show.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Creative Journal podcast. This is entry number 22 of the show, and it is Mental Toolkit for Creatives Part 2. I did Part 1 about 3 months ago, and it was episode 3 back in 2023. But welcome to the first Mental Toolkit for Creatives episode of 2024. So for those of you who don't know, the mental toolkits are episodes that I do. I run a lot of experiments on myself, and I come back and I report the findings to you guys. These are some of the things that I do throughout my day to help increase productivity, mindsets, supplements, sleep, all the regimes, all the tools that we have are at our disposal as creatives. You know, I kind of put myself through them, and these are some of the mindset shifts that have helped me. So in this episode, episode 2 of the toolkits, we are going into a mental framework called play, power, and people. These are the 3 directions that we're going to be talking on today about how to maintain sustained creative energy and do your very best work. And it doesn't even have to be creative work. It can be any kind of sustained desk work. And as those of you who are familiar with YouTuber Ali Abdaal, he just released a book. It's called Feel Good Productivity. And these are the 3 chapters that are in his book in part 1, which is called Energize. So these are the 3 sort of avenues and levers that you can pull when you want to maintain sustained creative energy throughout your entire workday. So number 1 is play. And play can be broken down into 2 characteristics that I've really kind of embodied this week. And I think it's a good mindset to have just in general to approach your work as play. And that may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but there's a couple ways you can go about doing this. And Ali talks about in the book, you can embody different characters, which is a really interesting one. And it may sound a little bit delusional, but it's not, I promise. So if you embody different characters in your work, say you're getting ready to do a nice work session, and say, okay, today I want to embody the character of the speed demon, which is something I've tried. So I'm really trying to work on my technical skills for design and work on my productivity in the sense that I can get more work done faster. And when you're doing like rote creative work, whether it's a logo or a brand identity, or you're just doing something that's like that's a little bit monotonous, you can be in the ideation phase where you just want to get as many ideas down and kind of see what sticks. It's really productive to be able to work faster. And naturally, I would say I'm about a 7 out of 10 on the speed aspect of my work, and I'm really trying to improve that. Shout out Jackie Kasai, someone I work with over at Rudis, one of the fastest technically skilled people that I've ever seen. She works very quickly, and I'm trying to get my brain to work in that capacity. So approach your work with a third-person view of a character that you want to embody to kind of approach your work as play. Another way to approach your work as play is to lower the stakes, and Ali talks about this in part 1, which is to energize. And you can lowering the stakes of your creative work means that you put things into perspective, right? So having a reflection session, whether it's before you get into work or you're overthinking sometimes, if you can just lower the stakes, and I'll use the example of golf. In my past life, I was a competitive golfer, And the stakes are everything, because the more relaxed you are on the golf course, the more that you can get into the mindset of being in a sustained, creative, relaxed mindset. You're going to do your best. And if you're tense when you're creating, if you think, oh man, I'm thinking about this as a business. This client hasn't paid this invoice, and I need to make him something that's really creative. I need to force this logo concept into existence. I need to build this website in a way that really impresses people. If you overanalyze that much, then you're just going to raise the stakes in your mind. You're not going to be able to do your best work. So I use the example, like I said, of Tiger Woods. When he's going for his 14th major championship in the Masters, the stakes are very high. So he's probably not enjoying a nice round of golf with the boys and shooting the shit with his homies. He is and Tiger is better at, staying relaxed than all of us. Like, he might have been a bad example, but if you're nervous when you're doing anything, you're not going to enjoy yourself, and you're going to run out of creative energy very fast, and that's a recipe for burnout. Something that Jocko Willink says, if you guys don't know him, he is a Navy SEAL, wrote a book about leadership. I'm blanking on the name right now, but he always says, discipline is freedom, and something that he also says is slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Extreme Ownership is the book that Jocko wrote. I just put it in with that. But Jocko says slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I know that may sound counterintuitive because I just talked about embodying the identity of a speed demon. But if you can approach work with the mindset that you are being deliberate, and that there's no pressure attached to what you're doing, and approach work with the mindset of play in the sense that you're detaching, you're stepping back, and you're allowing your creative mind to do its thing instead of always stressing about the final outcome. So detachment is a big part of that as well. And the third part of approaching work with a mindset of play is called the experiential mindset. So this is another way to kind of lower the stakes, is that you're going into any task with the idea that you are looking for experience. You're not looking to try and curate a specific outcome right in that moment. So, and this has really helped me because, especially in a career sort of sense, if you're doing an internship, or if you are in a job that maybe you don't see yourself doing for the rest of your life, you have to detach from that and say, okay, it's all about kind of getting a third person perspective, because I think a lot of the times when we're in these creative mindsets for ourselves, it's always easier to connect the dots when you detach a little bit and you can see in your workday using these creative mindsets that it's a lot easier to be kinder to yourself and kind of get a perspective of where you are. So for example, if you're in an internship, like I was saying, and this isn't what you want to be doing for the rest of your life, you can think, okay, everything I gain from this is experience, and therefore that is a win, because I know beforehand and I have acknowledged to myself that I'm doing this for experience. Then that's all you need to know. Then you are in the right place because you are optimizing for learning rather than trying to get to a certain place right in this instant. And another thing is another part of the experiential mindset is to approach all inputs with sincerity rather than severity. So be kind to yourself, be sincere, and especially when you're giving feedback, when you're receiving feedback, do so out of a mindset of sincerity, and just be kind to yourself, man. And those are all great ways to approach work as play. In fact, at work I have a little sticky note. This is something else that Ali Abdaal, is I have a sticky note that says, it's literally just me and my handwriting. I have this written all about in my journal too. It says, oh yeah, this is going to be fun. So when I have a sticky note on my laptop and I see it, I think, okay, how do I approach this exact work session with a mindset of play? And that really helps me kind of reframe, get into the right mindset. And I always find that when I approach this as a game, when I approach my business as a game, when I approach my career as a game, the stakes are lowered, and I'm just so much more creatively sustained, and I'm ready to get after it. So that is everything I have for play. And on to the next part of this mental toolkit, episode 2, is power. And this is a concept that the book talks about, and it can be a little bit misconstrued, so I want to elaborate on it. Power can have a lot of negative connotations, but in this sense, it's about reclaiming power and empowering yourself through your work. So, for example, is if you say to yourself, the more you tell yourself the more confidence that you have in your skill set, in your mind, in your career, in yourself, then the more you can actually achieve. And I know that sounds very redundant, but if you tell yourself you can achieve something, everyone knows this, the likelihood that you can do it automatically just skyrockets. The more that you believe you can achieve, the more you actually can. And for a tactical example that I have is, in my conversation with my friend James Barnard. Stay tuned for that episode coming out. It's going to be a great one. Should be in 2 or 3 weeks, so stay tuned. But he approaches work from the mindset of being an expert. So he views himself as an expert, but he's always expressing that he's ready to learn. He's creating content with the mindset of engaging with other people. But when people come across his page, he's giving tips. His content is all about helping other designers. So he's positioning himself as the expert in his industry. And that's a great thing. I talked to my friend Chris Webb yesterday. We'll link him below. A great UI UX designer, multifaceted, has built a great career. He was in the military, has a family, great work-life balance. I was talking to this guy the other day, and Chris said one of the biggest things that he's done to help his business is approaching, whether it's networking groups or it's clients, approaching himself as, he called it in these exact words, a humble expert. And that's a great way to empower yourself and also not get a big head, because it's good to have faith in your skills and be empowered by the value that you bring, but also not to let it get in your head and keep that beginner's mind, because as soon as you become overly confident in what you can provide, then you stop growing. So empower yourself by positioning yourself as the expert, but also keeping a beginner's mindset. The concept of power, like I said, can mean many things, but it's also a good mindset to approach work with. And a way you can reclaim power is to take control. A lot of people, a lot of times, there's a lot of processes in our business and our design career that we don't have control over. Some things, we have to do. Some things we don't enjoy. You don't always have autonomy over what you do, but you almost always have autonomy over how you do it. So, for example, you can do different processes. You can go about doing admin, email, anything with a different process and a different mindset to keep it fresh and maintain creative, sustained energy. You can have different workflows. You can use different shortcuts. And I encourage you guys to do this. I encourage you not to be someone that is exactly the same as everyone around you, and challenge yourself by trying new things, try a different process, try a different software, different tools. You have the autonomy, even though you are maybe stuck doing something you don't want to do in the moment. You have the creative freedom to do it. You have the creative freedom to inject different elements of creativity and use all these tools, all these mindsets to keep your work fresh and keep you creatively sustained. Like, for example, you can change your environment, you can change the method in which you do things, and you can almost always listen to music as well, or podcasts. And I always have this journal out. I'm always thinking of the next creative idea. I'm always taking in new inputs while I'm on the job. So if I'm in an hourly job and maybe I'm doing a design that's not directly benefiting the design business, I'm always stewing over past podcasts. I'm always intaking an audiobook, and this is going to be it's going to detract from my focus, but my goal in the moment is not to create great work, but it's to accomplish that goal, like we talked about I'm in the experimental mindset right now. I'm in an hourly job, and to do my best in this role, I've acknowledged beforehand that growing my business is something that's the most important to me right now. So approach work with the mindset of reclaiming power. And I think that's a great reframe, and it's a great thing that Ali talks about. So look to reclaim power in almost any aspect that you can. And people, I think part of this comes from our human need to just love control, like I, something about having control, a sense of autonomy, it's a basic human need. I think it might even be on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but don't copy me on that because I don't know for sure. But it's having a sense of control and autonomy. It's I choose to versus it's I get to versus I have to. And once you make that reframe in your mind, then you're so much more likely, I am so much more likely to do something, because autonomy is powerful and it's something that you can give yourself. So that is the power mindset shift in our creative toolkit. And the last and final one, something that I took for granted for a long time, and I am betting that you probably are too, the last P is people. And now you might ask, how is people a object in our creative toolkit? And to be honest, they aren't. It's a word that starts with P, but really means interaction, social interaction. So when you talk about people, there's a couple aspects that I want to hit on. Number one is communication. And that is all he talks about in the book. Humans always think that we have over communicated when in fact we almost always have under communicated. So keep this in mind when you're dealing with clients, when you're dealing with partners, when you're dealing with superiors, when you're dealing with coworkers, just anyone you go through without your day. Think it's almost like I forget the name of the fallacy that everything takes 15% longer than it actually does. So you over-index and say, okay, I think I've communicated this idea, this task, this brief well enough, but just to make sure, I'm going to go above and beyond and do it just a little bit better to make sure. And there's really no downside to this. So I really encourage you to, don't be long-winded, but to really go into a mindset of over-explaining yourself and justifying everything that you do, because it can only benefit you. The next aspect of people is my favorite, which is called the comrade effect. So they've done a ton of studies, and in the book he mentions several studies where people who view themselves as working together in a task are more likely to be A, accountable, and B, to do their best work and stay focused and put their best foot forward. And there's kind of two sides to this, and it really applies to creative business. One is that you can create a comrade effect with your clients and your partners by using those statements that I talked about, which is using keywords like we and us and together and stuff like that when you're talking to them. But you can also create them as you can reframe yourselves as comrades and teammates by picking out, and this is one a little bit more deviant, but it's also more fun, is to do so against your competitors. And you have to be careful with this, but in order to build, one of the ways you can build a comrade effect with your clients is to say, we're going to war, to say XX industry competitor, this is what we have to do to beat them, and this is what we are doing that is setting us apart, and this is why we are superior to this competitor. That's a really powerful mindset, and it's a great way to leverage the comrade effect with your partners and clients. So that's a great avenue. And the last one we're going to hit on is small acts of kindness. And this is a great way to not just maintain great relationships and leverage the power of people and your creative workflow, but just sending small gifts, compliments, one-off, just you get a double benefit effect of, sharing kindness, and I cannot recommend it enough, whether it's a quick thank you note, a gift card, getting a coffee for someone, asking someone out to lunch, just paying someone a quick compliment. you can't go wrong doing this. And when you're leveraging the power of social interaction, which is arguably one of the most powerful, and it's one that I neglected for a super long time, the effect of having good social relationships on your work and your mindset is unparalleled. And I can't speak to this enough. I really can't. So kind of having these foundational mindset tips in the creative tool chest and the creative mental tool chest is a great way to leverage it. So to summarize, we have play, power, and people. The brief synopsis of play is to embody different characters in order to lower the stakes, and approach work with an experiential mindset in order to lower the stakes as well. When it comes to reclaiming power in your work, have high confidence. The more that you think you can do, the more you can actually do. And by taking control, you can reclaim power. So even though you don't always have autonomy of your actions, you always have autonomy in which the way you go about executing them. And you have a lot of creative freedom in that realm. And then people, the most powerful. Communication, creating a comrade effect with the people you value, and small acts of kindness. So those are the 3 parts I wanted to touch on in this week's episode of the Creative Journal Podcast, entry number 22. And this is Toolkit for Creatives Part 2. I hope you guys like this series. I really enjoy doing the research and kind of putting them into a reframe that applies to creative business and creative work. And those are the 3 things that I've been putting into practice lately in my creative career, and I've seen a lot of dividends so far. And yeah, again, teaching them on the show is just a good reminder to myself. Like I said, you don't truly know something unless you can teach it. So I'm grateful to have the honor to teach you guys, some of the stuff that I've learned, and I hope these tips help you as well. So thank you guys for listening to Toolkit for Creatives Part 2, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. We got a lot of banger guests coming up this year. If you haven't yet, leave a like and a review on whichever platform you're listening to. I can't even put into words how much that helps. That makes such a big difference, and I'm grateful, and I see it every time you guys do it, and it makes my heart soar because I love you guys. You guys can interact with me on Instagram DMs. You can send me an email at andy@mmgdesign.net. Takes 5 seconds. The link will be in the show notes. Just say hello. I'd love to hear from you guys. I want to engage with you guys more. But yeah, this has been Toolkit for Creatives Part 2. Let me know as well if you have any recommendations for future creative mindset tips. I do, and like I said, I am my own guinea pig, so I'll try these all. But have a great one. Peace out.